The isle is full of noises, sounds, and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. 200 years ago, the Isle of Man was taken over by the Crown of England. Its nominal ruler is the Queen, represented here at the annual Tynwald ceremony by Princess Margaret. But its government is conducted by the Lieutenant Governor, a legislative council including such ancient arbiters as 2 deemsters or judges, and the Lord Bishop of Sodor and Man, and the 24 elected members of the House of Keys. In the old days, the island boomed on smuggling. Today, its 50,000 inhabitants are almost entirely dependent on the tourist trade, the come-overs, as they call them. Holidaymakers contribute 3/5 of the island's income. Manxmen have been brought up to regard the come-overs as a bounty from the Almighty. They are duly grateful, but not to the extent of opening their doors to the holidaymakers off the early morning boat before the traditional time. But the number of visitors is decreasing. Cheap continental holidays with guaranteed sunshine are providing such strong competition that the government is to spend £1.5 million on a roofed-in entertainment centre with artificial beach and sunshine. And despite income tax at 4 and 3 in the pound and cheap and plentiful housing, the island needs new residents. The strength of the island's economy was built up through 2 world wars, as one of the island's wealthiest businessmen, Mr. T.A. Colborne, explains.
We had some 50 to 60,000 prisoners of war over here, 1914 to 1918, and of course this brought a lot of money in to the Isle of Man exchequer. And the same thing happened, of course, in the last war, because we had a lot of soldiers over here, airmen, and of course we had the Royal Navy here. All those people, they were very much better paid in the last war than the first war, and they, of course, they did their shopping here, they brought their families over here, and I do believe that every week of the last World War here was like a bank holiday week as far as the tradesman was concerned, and of course this was a very good thing for Manx economy. But unfortunately, 20 years have gone, and we're due for another world war if the Isle of Man is to maintain its present standard of living. This, we all hope, is not going to take place, and of course we here in the Isle of Man, at long last, have got to take our coats off if we're going to get our bread and butter and a bit of cake on Sunday.
How to fill the disconcertingly empty promenades with newer and younger visitors. How to keep smiles on the face of the older regular customers. These are the problems facing the government. Today's holidaymaker is a critical animal.
I also think that they stop too much for meals. Everything stops at a certain time and you must be there or you must be here. The tours all go out and come back at the one time. I mean, everything is sort of run to form like a racehorse meeting or something like that, you know. I think when you go on holiday, you expect to be free and easy and come and go as you please, and you expect more entertainment than what you would have at home.
Another thing I'd like to see is the extortion in the pubs. You can't go up and order a drink on your own. You've got to be waited on. And when you order a drink, they demand a tip each time, without all one stopping.
What's the problem? 12 o'clock, midnight, everything just is dead. Closes down. Terrible. Dead. Absolutely. And if you're not out for streets at 12 o'clock, you're for a severe belt with a big stick, a pull-us.
There's nowhere really for the sort of early 20s to go and enjoy themselves, sit around the candlelit tables, etc., and have a dance.
Yes, I'd like to see one of them brought back again that was here some years ago, and that was the Palace Ballroom for dancing only, for all ages. And I think they spoiled the island, more or less, not having it.
It's all shake, shake, shake.
The rowdier atmosphere of the island is reflected in the House of Keys, as Clifford Irving explains.
I was elected for the House of Keys in the Isle of Man 10 years ago. And in those 10 years, I've seen a terrific difference in the atmosphere here. In 1955, we had a House of Keys which was largely elderly gentlemen who were doing their best for the community, but perhaps with rather fixed or closed minds, and didn't realize the necessity of livening the island up and progressing in so many directions. Now, in 1965, 10 years later, we have a completely different House of Keys. We have a group of members who are progressive and are keen to see changes in the island, who realize the need for change. They can see the great challenge from other resorts, and that they can see the problems that are facing the island, which for many years we ignore. We have these members now who many people on the island feel perhaps are going to extreme, with the pendulum maybe has swung a bit too far the other way from reaction to, one might say, too much progress and too much spending.
The government's answer to the economic problem is to spend more on attracting tourists by new and controversial means. Mr. Jack Nivison, chairman of the Gaming Board, explains.
The tourist industry is the trump card which the Manx government are using in order to meet this economic problem. And they have had legislation passed quite recently to have almost unrestricted hours as far as the hotels are concerned, to give added assistance to boarding houses and hotels. They have also widened their field as far as their appeal to the tourists is concerned. They've gone into the continent, even into Holland. And the latest acquisition, as far as legislation is concerned, has been the introduction of legislation for a casino in the Isle of Man, which is now in the course of erection. And it is hoped that it will attract a new clientele to the island.
But from church-going Manx and supporters of the island's strong Sabbatarian tradition, the government has met fierce opposition. One of their leading spokesmen is Mr. Edward Collister, a member of the House of Keys.
This building, once the home of the Lords of Man, has been prostituted to the popular craze of gambling, to which I am fundamentally opposed. We have in the islands probably the most irresponsible government the island has ever had. It seems to have neglected the stable, basic industries for easy money gimmicks. High tradition and principles and ideals seem to be abandoned to any licentious popular game that the people want. The island itself, the government of the island could provide material for a good comic opera. We have 24 members in our legislature, 20 of whom call themselves independents, who are quite irresponsible to anybody except vested interests, which are camouflaged by humbug and hypocrisy. And it would seem to me that we have given over this island to easy money gimmicks and a craze for getting rich quick.
£500,000 was poured into this institution last year, out of which the government got £30,000, 15%. And I say that that is the dearest money this government has ever earned. I am satisfied that the people of the Isle of Man have begun to realize that this is a sordid business, and that if the present regime continues and is allowed to hold power, the Isle of Man will be sold, as this building has been, lock, stock and barrel to the highest bidder.
Chief among the highest bidders are Crockford's Limited, the London gambling organisation, who have taken over the gambling concession in the Casino Hotel and undertaken to build a new casino. The managing director is Mr. A. Solkin.
As I said, our function on the island is to provide gaming and entertainment for the tourists that come to this beautiful island, and to provide it in such a way that they get all the thrills and excitement normally associated with French casinos, but at very little cost. We, of course, are building a new hotel and a new casino on a site adjacent to this, and while the building will be very modern, the decor will, I hope, be very beautiful, the gaming will still be of the democratic kind, still to attract the same sort of people. We don't want big gamblers losing a lot of money. We want a lot of people spending just £2 or £3 a night and enjoying themselves.
But critics of the casino claim it is not having quite the desired effect.
Now, the casino in Douglas was designed to bring money to the Isle of Man. This it definitely has not done. The Manx people, residents in the Isle of Man, I believe have gone gambling mad, just the same as the people over in your island, the other island. I think they've gone completely mad on gambling, and this, of course, has upset the whole economy of the Isle of Man, particularly in the winter months. They spend more money than they can afford at the casino. Result is that I believe tradesmen's debts are mounting up. Houses are not getting the repairs they should do due to the gambling over at the casino, and I think it is quite wrong, and I would favor very much legislation to stop locals entering the casino at all.
Apart from gambling, the island has failed to attract many lucrative industries. A recent survey claimed that of 15 firms who had moved to the island, 8 said that they would not have come there knowing what they did now. Mr. Austin Potter came from Jersey to set up his pottery 2 years ago.
Sometimes I wish we hadn't started it, because we had a lot of problems. We came up against things like the usury bill, which is a measure they have here, not yet rescinded, whereby you can't borrow money or lend money at more than 6%. Secondly, we had the problems of staff. We have to train staff. Everybody here has got to be trained. You can't get a trained staff. And you can't employ men without permission from the mainland, so long as there is a Manxman able to do the job. Now, these are problems that affect every island, and one doesn't blame them for that sort of thing. But we have overcome the problems. We have now got a trained staff, and we now have an industry which I believe is going to live.
I was the first industrial officer appointed by the Isle of Man government in 1961. And I began from the ground floor, trying to introduce industries into the island. And to a certain degree, it was successful, the effort, and a number of industries came here. But I wasn't here very long before I discovered that the chief difficulty was the predominance of the tourist industry, which overshadowed all else. Quite a large number of people were prepared to give lip service to the encouragement of industry, and to a certain extent, the government gave industry a boost. But at all times, and behind it all, was the feeling that the tourism was the predominating influence, and that nothing must get in the way of tourism. The story goes back quite a long way, in fact, because in the late 18th century, this island was a very busy industrial place. It was only in the early Victorian period, when tourism took the place of fishing, that this influence came about, and has remained and continues very strongly. The island now finds itself in competition with other centres, and is battling ever more and more
to compete with these other centres for tourism, with the result that really one can say that the island is producing not only advantages for tourism, but at the same time is actually holding back the development of industry by the same token.
With one of the lowest birth rates in Europe, the island also has a growing number of old people. There is one old age pensioner for every 3 workers.
One of the main basic problems, I would think, is this question of the imbalance in the population here in terms of age. That is, literally, we have too many old people. This is a wonderful place to retire to, and it encourages elderly people to come here. Young Manx people, well, they want to go away and wider fields to conquer, shall we say. So that it does mean that we've got this population with a low birth rate, a lot of elderly people, and we've got this enormous problem of attracting more younger people to the island.
And it is not just the old who died. The island's most famous tourist attractions, by which the short summer season is stretched out, are the tourist trophy race and the Manx Grand Prix. One national newspaper claimed that visitors came to the island hoping for blood. But charges that motorcycling is dangerous are refuted by experts like the Reverend F.M. Cubban.
Well, I think it's rather silly. I'm one of the patrons of this race meeting by virtue of my being president of the Isle of Man Central Council branch of the British Red Cross Society, and I would not take part in anything where I thought people were recklessly wasting their lives or going into dangerous acts. I think with all sport there's a certain element of danger, especially when you think of the lives that are lost in mountaineering, or even on the race, the ordinary turf racing, on occasional serious accidents. And I don't see that the motorcycle racing is any worse than that at all. And it's not the professional riders, as a rule, that are killed. There are very few actual serious accidents during the races. Most accidents, I think, are the followers, the people that come over to watch the races, who want to copy the riders. They go dashing around the TT course, and they don't realize how dangerous some of the corners are at the speed they're going around at, and therefore they have these fatal accidents, which is most unfortunate. And therefore it brings a bad name sometimes to the ordinary races. But the men who take part in these races, they're a very fine type of man, and they're not likely to take any risk if they can possibly help it. And I'm quite sure that there is no more danger in motorcycle races than anything else. And also, I support the races because it's a good, clean sport. And of course, it brings a tremendous number of people over to this island. And I'm sure that they all enjoy themselves when they come here.
Nevertheless, records show that since the start of the TT and the Grand Prix, 71 riders have been killed, 51 of them since the war. While racing and gambling provide an exciting foreground in Manx affairs, the more traditional occupations tend to be forgotten. Once, herring fishing was the staple industry of the island. Today, it's in a sorry state.
Well, when we were young, there was about 200 boats belonging to Peel here. And now there's none, they're nearly all gone. There's about half a dozen left, you see. All the men are gone, and the young fellas won't take it up, and yeah, that's just it. There's no boats, no men, no fish.
Hi, give it to me, yeah.
£20 I bid, £20 I bid, 25 I bid, 25, 2010, 2015, 2310, 2315, 2040, £24, 24.5, 24.10, 24.15, 25 up, £25 up now, 25 up, 25.
Catches are pitifully small, and at the daily fish auction in Peel, the few baskets of herring command a price which threatens to close down the kippering trade.
28, 18, 29 pounds up now. 29 pounds, 29 pounds too. They all done now at 29 pounds too. They all finished. They all had enough now. We'll go again.
Not only that.
29 pounds too, and they're yours. Manx Kipper Company, 29 pounds 2 shillings.
Significantly, the most successful fisherman out of Peel is a Scot, and he gets a £200 subsidy from the government to find the herring.
Yes, the fishing is going up completely here. And I think the reason is the lack of boats. There's not near enough boats here to cover the area. There used to be over 100 boats fishing at the year. And now we're left on our own, just the one boat. We get paid a subsidy to look for herring. And only for that we couldn't keep going. We'd one cran this morning, a good enough price, but no use for either us or the buyers. It's like this, you see, if there was a lot of boats going out, they could fan out and all shoot in different places. But I could only be at one place at a time. I might go southwest tonight and the hen might be northeast and vice versa. So you see, you need a lot of boats to cover a big area. And another problem here is the lack of young men to go to the fishing. There's nothing in it to attract them, you see. I have an apprentice aboard just now. He does 2 years. But what future is in the job for him?
Today, instead of the fishing boats, the gaily decorated longboats of Peel Viking Festival provide the main attraction for the visitor, and a welcome chance to manhandle local maidens for the male residents. Besides such cheerful preoccupation with the lustier aspects of their history, the Manx diligently preserved their reputation as a superstitious people.
They never started the fishing on a Friday. The old men wouldn't do that. They waited till the following week to get a night the next week, you see, or a day the next week. They wouldn't start on the Friday at all. And if they were starting to come on a Monday morning, they come to the boats and they met any women, they'd turn back again. Make a new start then again. Didn't like to meet the women on Monday mornings at all. They didn't mind on the week, but not on the Monday morning. And when you were in the boats, if there was any cooks or anything, the men wouldn't let you talk about grunters, not as pigs. You weren't allowed to talk about pigs or dogs or rabbits or hares or anything like that. Weren't allowed to talk about them at all. Just fishing, nothing but fish. That's all that was in their heads, fish.
Well, they seem very nice, but they're very, very superstitious. Oh, they are. So we went over a bridge and a saloon yesterday, and the saloon actually stopped on the bridge for everybody to say, "Good afternoon, little sirs, we thought we could go over." That's what I say, duck in the dead.
The eccentricity of some of the island's celebrated animals, such as the Manx cat and the four-horned sheep, combine with the atmospheric quality of the island to produce a valuable aura of magic. But whether to bring back the fish or the visitors, the island is certainly in need of a magician. It used to have an outstanding one, Dr. Gardner, custodian of the Witches' Mill. He died 2 years ago, but his work continues. The Witches' Coven he founded is one of the thriving activities in the island.
And call upon thee to descend unto the body of this thy high priestess and servant Owen here. Speak with her tongue, touch with her hands, kiss with her lips, that thy servants may be fulfilled.
As the acclame is the male, so is the cup the female, and conjoined they bring happiness.
In spite of the magic and the mysterious beauty of this island, in spite of the strenuous efforts of its government to stimulate tourism. One suspects that the root of the problem lies deep in the character of the Manx people. A local journalist, a native Manxman, sums up.
You get two kinds of people in the Isle of Man. There are the people out there, the come-overs, the visitors, the cash customers, if you like, and you also get the Manx people. And it may well be that the English people, the come-overs, don't really understand the Manx, because the Manx themselves are a strange people. And in fact, the complexities of their national character contributes a good deal to the national dilemma that they have now. For instance, you have their natural, brooding, Celtic unpredictableness, to which they add, by borrowing, the parsimony of the Scot, the natural joie de vivre of an Irishman, the rigid nonconformism of a Welshman, and the business acumen of the English, that nation of shopkeepers. There are very many Manx people, not only in the Isle of Man, but all over the world, and many of them have achieved a great deal of distinction. And we, who live here, are very proud of these Manx exiles of ours. If, however, a Manxman makes good in his own island, he'll probably find that his personal popularity decreases as his personal possessions, such as a rose, a mansion, or a mistress, increase. There's one thing that the Manx people are entirely convinced about, and that is that they want to make the Isle of Man a place which is secure and prosperous to live. But they would never dream of entering into a national cooperative movement together to achieve this end. The Manx are more rugged individualists than a team, and they spend far more time fighting among themselves than working together. There is a story which Manxmen tell against themselves which illuminates their national character, and it concerns a fisherman, a Manx fisherman who arrived back in Fort with a case overflowing with freshly caught crabs, and an Englishman saw this and pointed out that there was imminent danger of these struggling crabs escaping. And the fisherman said, "Nah, these are Manx crabs. When one gets the tough, all the others pull them down." This is the story that many people tell. I myself am a Manxman. I like being Manx. I wouldn't have a word said against them.
So, that was the BBC's portrait of the Isle of Man in 1965. Unremitting negativity, with all the statistics, whether it be about TT deaths, an ageing population, failing fishing and tourist industries, or rampant gambling, presented as being indicative of a failing economy with a troubled, superstitious community. The other island indeed, not one that most people here recognised. Imagine our ageing population settling down to watch a nice film about the island on a Sunday, only to be shown what was happening in Castletown. Of course the island had problems in the 60s, but then any country has problems if you're determined to find them and focus on them. I remember the 60s. I was a teenager and my parents owned a hotel on Douglas Prom, and this is how I remember those summer days. Of course, if you film Strand Street in the rain, you can make it look grim. And if you choose the right time of day, when everyone's in having breakfast or lunch, you can make the promenade look deserted, as it was during those hours. But then, why were all these hundreds of thousands of people coming here every year if it was such an awful place? And as regards there being no boats, no men, no fish, well, that's not how every film crew saw Peel when they filmed there at that time. It all depends on how you set out to portray your subject. It'll come as no surprise to learn that there was outrage across the island. "It was a shocking exhibition," trumpeted the Isle of Man Weekly Times. "My blood runs cold," said an alderman. "It was a death blow," he added. "We cannot complain too strongly," said a councillor. Of course, it was raised in Tynwald. Mr. Howard Simcox, MHK for Russian, said that the programme depicted the people of the island in a most savagely horrible and offensive manner. His Excellency, Sir Ronald Garvey, said that that description might not be strictly in parliamentary terms, nevertheless he also deplored the contents of the programme. He said that an island representative, Sir Ralph Stevenson, would be raising the matter with the BBC, and His Excellency himself would be writing to the corporation's Director General, Sir Hugh Green, to raise the island's concerns. 2 months later, His Excellency was able to report to Tynwald that Sir Ralph's impression when he raised the issue with the BBC North Region was that they were very much on the defensive. His Excellency also reported that his own correspondence with the Director General had not been very satisfactory either. He had strongly urged Sir Hugh Green to consider a further film presenting a more balanced view of the island. Sir Hugh replied that the film was the work of an experienced director and should be seen in the context of the BBC's general treatment of the island, and no, they couldn't commit to a further film. So, sorry, Isle of Man, Auntie is always right. So why did the BBC produce such a biased and demeaning portrait of the Isle of Man, including what must have been a first for British television in 1965, naked buttocks? It's purely my speculation, but it can't go unnoticed that the previous year, 1964, saw the start of the first licensed commercial rival to the BBC, Manx Radio. It had eventually been given its licence after years of acrimonious opposition from the BBC and the British government. Is it possible that during the months following Manx Radio's first broadcast that someone at the BBC said, "Let's go over there and show the world our version of the Isle of Man, an ageing, superstitious lot hooked on gambling whose economy's going off a cliff"? Well, that's how they portrayed us. It seems the basic rules of balance had not yet come into play. And, as His Excellency pointed out in his letter to the Director General, the film had done nothing to strengthen the Manx public's regard for the BBC.